Good afternoon from Georgetown, Guyana, and welcome to the Rush to those persons joining us internationally, in the region, and right here in Guyana. It is day 332 of the fraudulent administration's time in power. We continue to watch their every step. My name is Randolph Critchlow, and I want to thank you for joining us on the Rush. Let's unpack, folks. Let's unpack. My operator's a little slow. Folks, let's unpack. Great. We are back and we have so many things to talk about today. Let your friends know that we are ready. Day 332 of this fraudulent administration. And we're going to be unpacking some important information today. And we want you to get all that is happening. We know, of course, later down, we're going to have some action in the ring because it's my colleague's birthday, so we're going to be in the ring a little later down. But right now we have some serious information that we want to talk about. But before we get into that, before we get into what is happening with free speech, we know that the police this afternoon would have arrested a member of parliament, Annette Ferguson, and former minister of housing and water, Annette Ferguson, on suspicions of cyber crime that she posted something on Facebook. Folks, we're going to talk about that. We're going to unpack the law as it relates to that and how procedures are being ignored by this fraudulent administration. We are going to be looking at the continued COVID saga with the Sputnik V vaccines, not only in Guyana but around the world. We're going to take a closer look at what is happening around the world with many countries putting these vaccines on a hold, as the information come in as to how the countries procured the vaccines. This is sadly, is not Guyana alone in this madness. We see other countries and persons will have stepped down in some countries because of this Sputnik V vaccine and the vaccine scandal, so to speak, around the world. We're going to be talking about that, and of course we are going to be talking about the economics of the day as we see rising food prices, rising cost of living, and we want to have sort of an economic mind on our program to help unpack what is happening with that side of our economy and why we're seeing these prices. So we're going to be joined by the Youth and Economic Advisor to the Leader of the Opposition, Mr. Elson Lowe, who is an economist in his own right, and he is going to be talking to us about that. Also, we're going to be talking about this corruption with the COVID vaccines. Folks, but let us say good afternoon to all of our friends who are joining us. Hundreds of you already on the live. Share the live stream. You know I like to give you your big up. You know the people say, big up the thing. Toronto is in the house. Thank you very much for being a part of this discussion this afternoon as we continue to watch what is happening around the country. Share the live stream, folks. Share the live. You have a simple job. My job is to bring the information and unpack it for you in such a manner that you will be able to know, share the information with others, credible and valid as it is. So your job is to share, like, comment, be part of the discussion because we want to know what you are thinking this afternoon. My job is to bring the information to you and unpack it, so to speak. But I like to give you your shout outs when you come on the live and you say where you're joining us from. All right. Shiraz in Toronto. Miami is in the house. Pleasant good afternoon. Coming from Joylyn Cook. Nicole Telford is looking at the program. Guyana. Welcome, Nicole. Welcome to the Rush. Welcome to all of you who are joining us this afternoon on the Afternoon Rush, formerly known as the Rush, or AKA the Rush. We are ready. Pleasant good afternoon to you all that are joining us. Let me continue down the line because we don't want to miss. You are the reason why we still have a program. You are tuned in every afternoon. You're doing your part. You're sharing the live stream. For those of you joining us on YouTube, continue to subscribe to the page. If you're joining us on Facebook, that is, ensure you leave a like the page or follow the page. That is the only way you get your notifications. Sometimes we are a little late in the program. We had some issues coming on. We normally on at 5:30 in the afternoon, but we are on a little late this afternoon, a few minutes late. Forgive me for that, please. But you get a notification on your phone whenever we are on. Turks and Caicos Islands, welcome. Delaware is in the house. North Ramvelt, Texas. Right, let's go down the line. Good afternoon from Port Kaituma, Stoby. Thank you very much for tuning in this afternoon. Brooklyn, New York. Right, let's go down. Tushin is in the house. Essequibo is in the house. London is in the house. New York is in the house. Folks, thank you very much. Riverton, Mikey Mike looking at us from YouTube. Thank you very much for the shout out from Riverton. My last job took me to Riverton every single month. Beautiful people up there. Thank you very much, Daphne. Aaron, for tuning in. We see you, June Holder. Thank you very much. Paradise is in the house. Hopetown, Sophia. Yes, Steve Robertson looking at us from YouTube. I'm always happy to see those persons tuning in from YouTube because we have more Facebook viewers than YouTube viewers. New Jersey is in the house. Thank you very much, folks, for all of your support as we get the numbers up and we share the live stream. This is our informal part of the program. Folks, I know I haven't discussed NBA in a while. We're down to the Eastern and the Western Conference Finals. So for those persons who, look forward to me talking about the NBA and bringing up your city, let me say that I am rooting for the Atlanta Hawks now because my team, Utah Jazz, they were booted out by the LA Clippers. The Clippers are again doing their thing without the star. But let's just give you an update, those persons who are following as we give the shout outs now. Right, the Atlanta Hawks, they're playing the Milwaukee Bucks, and that's in the East. In the West, you have the LA Lakers versus the Phoenix Suns. And, I can't call it. It's that close. We saw almost all of the stars are injured. So that's crazy. But let's get back to who is on the live. Leopold is in the house. East Ranvelt. Linden. Yvette Wolford looking at us from YouTube from Linden, Queens. A few more and then we'll get to the action, folks. A few more and then we'll get to the action. Let me say shout out and a happy birthday to my colleague, Sher Duncan, celebrating his birthday today. He didn't say his age. He didn't tell me his age. Right? He continues to be ageless, he said. He's ageless. He's aging like fine wine, he said. Newtown is in the house. But happy birthday to Mr. Sher Duncan. And tonight, of course, is going to be a celebration in the ring because he, of course, will be on tonight. Detroit, Kitty. Right. Desi Simon, Liverpool says, my team, the Hawks. Yes, the Hawks are kind of an underdog team this year. Kind of an underdog team. Kildonan is in the house. Kim Walker said he is 16. He's as young as he wants to be, I guess. He is as young as he wants to be. Our guest this afternoon also is celebrating a birthday, Mr. Elson Lowe. I'll tell him that when he gets on. So we have 2 birthdays today. But folks, let me get to my opening take this afternoon. I'm happy that you're here. As you're here, continue to share the live. Continue to let your friends and family know that the rush is on and we're about to unpack some credible and valid information. Let me get straight to my opening take this afternoon, folks. Folks, good afternoon again. I start the show today in sort of a somber mood. I know I sound a little bit upbeat because we have birthdays and all of these things, and you know, it's kind of a good day to be happy. But late this afternoon, I saw something, and I like to point out to you these troubling signs that I see. And I hope that I put you on to what is really happening in our country. There seems to be an attack on free speech. Very early on, I remember in the first week of this fraudulent government tenure, the term in office, the first 2 or 3 weeks, there was a publication by the government on cybercrime. For me, that raised my antennas. I looked at it with a skeptical eye. Because I know the administration, I know the regime, I know the people involved, the people behind the scenes of the PPP. They like to have control over the information that goes out there. That is how any dictatorial administration works. They like to control the information. They must control the narrative. They must control the stories. They must control what you consume in the media. So I took that with a grain of salt. I saw the president make a release on cybercrime and how the PPP government will be cracking down on so-called cyberbullying. And at that point in time, very early on in this afternoon rush show, I said to the public, I said, this is a signal of things to come. This is a sign of things to come, where the PPP will use this cybercrime law to try and silence the people on social media. And I want you to follow me here. Follow the trends. The PPP has control over the state media. NCN, the Department of Public Information, DPI, they have their surrogates, newsroom. They have their surrogates, the Guyana Times. They have their surrogates, Channel 65 News. They have their surrogates, Channel 28 News. They have control over all of those radio stations that take NCN's news and broadcast it in all of those indigenous communities and across the country. Those state-owned radio stations around the country, like in Region 1 in Mabaruma, they have a firm grip over a large percentage of the media landscape, the media sphere. Where they do not have control is on social media. And this is eating them out to the core. It is free media. It is free speech media. It is people like you who tune in every day and share the live stream that is bothering them at this point in time. There are shows like these, like mine, like In the Ring with Cher Duncan, like Straight Up with Mark Benchcup, Conversations with Rickford Burke, Politics 101 with Dr. Hines, Cam's TV, the Gavin Matthews Show, the shows that all of the opposition MPs have on Facebook. These are the things that are bothering them at this point in time because they have no control over them. These are free spaces where persons can come and express their thoughts. And because of the age that we live in, any little thing that is done by the PPP is exposed almost immediately. So social media is a problem for them. This is why weeks after they got into power, it was a big publication about how the president intends to crack down on cyberbullying. This is just a mask. That was just a mask for their intentions to try and crack down on social media voices. The reality is that we are living in a day and age where everyone has access, or should have access, I say, to a mobile device, to a tablet, a computer, and also access to internet. It was the APNU AFC that established those radio stations that they're now using to spread propaganda through NCN. It was the APNU AFC that went to those communities and established those internet hubs so persons can have access to information. And I tell you this today, shows like these and shows like all the others on Facebook and YouTube that are exposing them daily is a bane, it's a bane of their existence. So what did we see today? Even before I get to today, let's cast our minds back at what happened with Gavin Matthews. Let's cast our minds back to that and the attempts being made to muzzle him. So there's a clear pattern establishing of weaponizing the Cybercrimes Act and law to ensure that you curtail and you minimize and you diminish the voices. Those voices that are dissenting, those voices that are giving counter information, are trying to unearth the truth and not only allow the people to ingest and regurgitate your propaganda. And we see them desperately trying to keep up. They have basically corralled people like Critic to spread their propaganda because he's online. They've started their own show, Let's Talk Politics or something like that, with Ed Lane. They got 2 or 3 people watching when the night come. The Attorney General comes on ever so often with the unruly mule. I think the name of the show is Little Horse or Mule, something like that, and tries to spew some sort of narrative. So we see them trying to do that. But what happened today, folks? Yet another sign in the continued effort by the PPP to curtail free speech, to rein in those persons who are using this free platform to spread the information about what they are doing. Opposition MP Annette Ferguson arrested for allegedly sharing Facebook posts about killing squad. The complaint filed by a senior GDF officer alleges that Ferguson made a Facebook post falsely alleged that the officer will be in charge of a killing squad. Of course, folks, this was done. Let me read this entire story for you, and I want you to take heed. I want you to understand, and I take all of this in context to what I just explained about how the PPP has strategically tried to curtail those persons' rights to free speech online. Let's go. Let's dig into this story a little bit. Opposition Member of Parliament and former Minister of Housing and Water Annette Ferguson today was arrested by the Guyana Police Force after a complaint was filed against her by a senior member of the Guyana Defense Force in relation to alleged cybercrime. Here we see the word cybercrime. Alleged cybercrime. Note that I said to you that this is going to be the cloak. This is going to be the guise. This is going to be the mask that is used to try and curtail people on the internet. Cybercrime. In a statement, the Guyana police said Ferguson was arrested at CID headquarters. First of all, why are you arresting somebody when after somebody made an allegation of them? Is that the normal procedure? So if I go to the station and say that Robeson Ben said something about me, are you going to go and arrest Robeson Ben? If I go on the internet and say the Attorney General, the unruly mule, said something about me, you're going to go and arrest him? I wonder. The complaint filed by a senior GDF officer alleges that Ferguson made a Facebook post claiming that the officer will be in charge of a killing squad. The police said the investigations are ongoing and on completion, a file will be sent to the DPP for legal advice. And of course, we're picking up this story from News Source. News Source understands that Ferguson allegedly shared an article about an alleged killing squad to her page from an online blog. This is her sharing an information from an online blog. All right. The government recently announced the establishment, right, of a secretive regional security force. The opposition didn't even know about this force until Parliament that was caught in the National Assembly and the country caught the National Assembly and the country by surprise. And so this online blog posted that this officer might be the one in charge of this killing squad. And B. Ferguson reposted that. And the officer, of course, made a complaint. This is allegedly. And so the police force, in their infinite wisdom and their well-established procedure of trying to embarrass opposition activists and opposition MPs, ran to arrest Annette Ferguson. Speed. This is what the Guyana police force is being used to do. In a statement just released by the leader of the opposition, released a statement on this matter recently. And I'm going to give you a part of what the statement said. Leader of the opposition said this afternoon, a few minutes ago, that I strongly condemn the action by the Guyana police force in arresting PNU AFC coalition opposition member of parliament Annette Ferguson today on a spurious grounds of breaching the Cybercrime Act. Again, note this troublesome sign of using the Cybercrime Act to arrest persons. The PPP regime's persecution of political opposition continues with wanton disregard for the law, the Constitution, and the rights of citizens. The Guyana police force has been fully weaponized against the opposition. This is according to the leader of the opposition, Honorable Joseph Harman. We appeal to all right-thinking Guyanese, local and international, human rights bodies, civil society, and other democracy-loving entities to condemn these dictatorial and authoritarian acts of political persecution being meted out by the PPP to the opposition members of parliament. Just a part of that statement by the leader of the opposition on what played out. Folks, as I said, these are troubling signs. These are troubling signs that we're seeing. And I want everyone to understand that they are troubling signs. And I want us, and this will not be the final time I am talking about this particular issue, mark my word. We are going to see this thing pop up again and again, because the PPP has to have control over what goes out there. They can't sleep comfortable at night. They can't sleep comfortable at nights because you know what? Shows like these are exposing them daily. So they're going to try everything in their arsenal, including the cybercrime law, to curtail what is being said. And folks, with that, we've had my opening take. I want to get to some news of the day before I bring in my guest very quickly. I know he's standing by, and we're going to be talking to Mr. Elson Lowe in just a few minutes. Let's just run through some of the news of the day. What is happening in the news, folks? What is happening? As we see, we look around the newspapers and around the internet. Chief Justice blocks NISIL move to terminate lease against for Gaisuko lands. This is a very interesting case, folks, and we're going to have a legal expert on the show in the coming days to talk about this, because I want you to note this. This is no joke. Remember, it was the PPP who said, look, when we go in power, we are going to all of those persons who got lands under the AP and UAFC will have to give them back. How many persons remember that? As if NISIL was doing something wrong and was acting illegally. This is what the PPP said. This is what the PPP said, folks. Now all these people that you see getting land, buying land from NISIL and all over, they're going to give it back. Calvin Heath London, who was the head of NISIL, was involved in this same matter. Let me read for you what the Chief Justice said today, very quickly, as we rush through the headlines. Acting Chief Justice Roxanne George has issued a permanent injunction blocking the government's holding company NISIL or anyone acting on behalf for enforcing the notices that were served on several persons leasing NISIL-owed lands and properties to move. NISIL want the people move. The government again, they through the Attorney General and the President said, listen, y'all gotta come off these lands. Why they gotta come off of it? Because they had said, listen, you got this land under the APNU, you must have gotten it illegally. That's according to them. And they made a big hoorah about these lands given to these persons under the APNU AFC, under the stewardship of Mr. London. The injunction forms part of a ruling handed down by the Chief Justice yesterday, in which he found that several leases done by NISIL under the APNU AFC were properly, let me repeat that, were properly done and legal, and therefore those lease agreements could not be revoked by NISIL under the PPP. I must make you understand that, because I'm breaking down the issue for you. NISIL under the PPP wants to revoke those agreements that they had with those persons, that the APNU AFC had with those persons. The Chief Justice said, no, that can't happen. The PPP, just after the government changed last year, the new government dispatched several letters to force a number of companies and individuals to surrender the lands and properties that they were leased from NISIL on the grounds that NISIL wanted the properties and the lands to use. So the APNU AFC leased these lands to these people. The PPP come in and say, we want the lands back. essentially what they were doing was they were making good on their promise to take back those lands that were given under the APNU. But again, the Chief Justice said, nah. The People's Progressive Party civic government, they were contending that the leases were illegal and improper. Those are the words that the unruly mule, Nandalan, likes to use. Illegal and improper. Likes those words. So they're saying that the leases were illegal and improper. But in her ruling yesterday, the Chief Justice found that there was nothing illegal about the leases. Nothing illegal. We'll talk more about this story because you're not going to hear anything from this. You're not hearing Newsroom talking about this or NCN. But they will push the propaganda that the PPP pushing out that the AP and UFC did something illegal by selling these lands. Go and read the ruling, folks. Let's continue in the news. What else we have? And this final piece of news before we get to our guest this afternoon. Police ignores Gladstone Henry's alibi and corresponding statement in Harry Singh's murder probe, attorney Hughes. Folks, we told you that 4 persons would have been arrested and charged for the murder of 17-year-old Harry Singh of West Coast Berbice last year. Including in those 4 persons, a relative of Isaiah, Gladstone Henry, who is represented by attorney Nigel Hughes. Yesterday, when I spoke to former Minister of Public Security, he indicated that when he spoke with Attorney Hughes, he was saying that the police were ignoring the alibis, the sworn alibis that would basically exonerate some of these young men who they have now charged for the murder. This is what is happening. So we will continue to follow this, and I'm hoping to get Attorney Hughes on the line. Henry, who is the brother of the Henry Cousins, murdered last year in Berbice here, was charged along with 3 other young men for the murder of Harry Singh. The attorney explained that after a wanted bulletin was issued for Gladstone Henry, he accompanied him to CID where he was questioned about his whereabouts on the day of Harry Singh's murder. He said that Henry opted to remain silent in the interview and informed the officers that there were several eyewitnesses who were willing to come forward to confirm that Henry was somewhere else. But of course, the police are ignoring this, and hopefully we can get some more information. But folks, those are the stories that we are following. Those are the stories that we are following this afternoon. As we talk about that, let's get to our big story of the day, and that is COVID-19 and the economy. To help me unpack COVID-19 and Sputnik and vaccine and what is happening with the economy, I'll be joined by the advisor on youth and economics. I hope I got that right, to the leader of the opposition, young economist, Mr. Elson Lowe. Welcome to the show, Elson. We're always happy to have you. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Happy to be here.
Right. And let me say, first of all, happy birthday to you. I know you share a birthday with Mr. Sherrod Duncan, so happy birthday, first of all. And
thank you.
Welcome to the Rush once again. Elson, let's jump right into it. Let's deal with the economy first, because we have quite a lot to unpack in Sputnik. But we have seen the exponential, I'm trying to find a word, rise in products on the market. And, you know, Guyanese are very jovial about things. People are making a lot of jokes about it. It has become big memes. But outside of the laughter, are Guyanese, or should Guyanese be concerned about this trend in the rise in prices?
Yes, well, what we're seeing right now is substantial inflation Let's say the prices are going up, but the products are the same. And
Mm.
this is something that you're seeing all over the world. However, it's particularly severe in Ghana for two reasons. The first being that the flood has wiped out a lot of agricultural lands. And the second being that people will feel it more because we're not getting any government relief to help
Yeah.
to alleviate this. In many other countries, from our neighbors, Trinidad to, wealthy countries, etc., we're seeing multiple rounds of economic stimulus, which are serving the purpose of both boosting the economy and providing a lot of relief to people in these difficult times.
Yeah.
One thing that you even see is rent moratoriums where you don't have to pay rent for 6 months or 9 months while we sort out COVID. What we're looking at here in Guyana, though, is very sharp increases in prices, and consumers are having to bear the brunt of this. And their standard of life, their quality of life is much worse than it would otherwise have been. Much, much worse. And I think anybody who is cooking greens right now can relate. Anybody would be very understanding of what's going on. The other thing it's important to note is that really what we've got going on in Guyana is the confluence, the combination of two natural disasters. The first being COVID and the second being the flood. And when you see that you have substantial natural disasters, it is the expectation, I should think, that a government will be very aggressive in ensuring that there is relief provided, right? But as yet, we've not heard of another round of cash grant at all. And I think that there should be multiple rounds in order to help the economy to rebound. One of the things that is often also ignored in the midst of all of this is that if you look at the travel, the entertainment, the tourism industries, they are suffering substantially and will continue to suffer because of COVID. However, what relief has been provided for them specifically? I don't understand how you cannot be providing relief for the industries that are most vulnerable. But that aside, the average Guyanese really should receive some assistance to help to ease the burden of this shock to the market and to help us to move forward. I would also ask, I think, an important question. I see today that the price of oil is now reached $75 a barrel. Our estimates, our long-term estimates for oil and gas pricing tend to hover around $40 or $50 a barrel. So that means that currently oil is 50% higher than our estimates. Now that means we're having a real bumper or a real good moment of oil demand. So what we're seeing in the Natural Resources Fund is that we're seeing substantially more funds being accumulated than might be in other time periods. And of course, some people would say you want to save that for a rainy day, you want to save that for hard times, and so on. But my question is, what hard times are you talking about that are going to be harder than these times? Because at its core, we are suffering from two natural disasters. So what hard times are people waiting for? I don't see why you wouldn't have a couple more rounds of economic stimulus. It doesn't make any sense. In an environment where the country is making more money from oil, 50% more money from oil than we would really expect over the long term, where we're having a nice, excellent period, we are not giving out further rounds of economic relief. Does that make any sense at all?
And
This is the moment.
yeah.
These are the circumstances where citizens need to receive support from their government. And not just, support where it's like you're giving, like you don't really want to give. Give so that people are feeling the benefit of these oil and gas revenues. Why is it that people are not feeling the benefit of that which is theirs? That is to say, the oil and gas returns. It belongs to Guyanese. Why, in a time of crisis, dual crisis, two natural disasters, are Guyanese not feeling the benefit? That makes no sense. And frankly, it is very sad. So that
Yeah.
is the policy approach we're seeing by the PPP, where they're not giving out rounds of stimulus as they should. where
Yeah.
the stimulus itself is small in scale, $25,000, people complaining that that can't do anything. I give you another way to think about it. Stimulus in many other countries has been equivalent to the minimum wage, right? Whether that's public or private minimum wage,
Yeah.
so as
At
to
least one,
ensure
at
that,
least a month's salary.
yeah. And here's the thinking behind that, which I want people to understand. If you're giving somebody relief that is supposed to help them, how can you be giving them less than the lawful minimum wage? The
Hmm.
minimum wage is there for a reason. It's because we believe that that is the minimum that somebody can survive on. So
Yes.
how are you giving people less than the minimum that somebody can survive on?
Yeah.
Can that make sense?
Makes no sense at all. And we're following the comments, and I want to pick up on a few things that you said. Precious Mineral on Facebook said some people didn't even get the first round of cash as yet. So that we have the shambolic nature in which they rolled out that program, and it being just
Yeah.
a slush fund for the activists on the ground.
It was very poorly administered. There's considerable concern that about $1.5 billion has been stolen. There's
Hmm.
calls for the Auditor General to look into it because, as I would have mentioned previously, they requested monies for about 280,000 households, whereas there should only be about 220,000 households. So that means $1.5 billion of extra funds by
Hmm.
estimates from the UN and from the 2012 census. They requested $1.5 billion extra, so I don't know where that money has gone. I'm not saying it's been stolen, but I'm saying I'm real curious where it is.
I will venture to say, given the nature of the beast, I wouldn't be surprised if it's in somebody's pocket on the PvP side. I don't
So
know who.
we continue to call for the Auditor General to
Hmm.
audit this, to come up with a report as to where these funds are. We're
Hmm.
not hearing anything from the Auditor General. This program was announced in September of last year. It is now June, and we're still not hearing anything out of the Auditor General. What's
Yeah.
going on? What is the explanation for that? I'd love to have an opportunity to ask the Auditor General what his explanation for that is.
Yeah.
So that is one element of it. But the other thing I want people to understand, and this is what is concerning about the way that things are heading, is that if you look at Venezuela and you look at the distribution of goods and services from the government there, you see that those who are not supporting the ruling party do not benefit in the same way substantially. They access government services substantially less. And that's something that has been studied. I think you can find that by the Heritage Institute. So that is something that unfortunately would appear to be reflected in Guyana, and it is something that we'll have to be worried about going forward. I
Yeah.
think that in order to mitigate these types of things, we have to have much more efficient government systems, not this house to house, going from person to person. I mean, it seems obvious to me that pensioners, as an example, now that they're being integrated so that you can wire the money directly to them, these pensioners should be receiving their COVID-19 cash grant through the wire.
Yeah.
In fact, all Guyanese who have a bank account should be receiving it in their bank account rather than people walking around. You will observe that while that program was announced in, I think, September, it is in January and February they were still giving out COVID-19 cash grants.
Yeah.
January and February,
Shambolic.
which means
Shambolic.
shambolic, shambolic.
I want to pick up on something. I don't want to leave the Exxon and the oil funds just to go. I want to pick up on that before we switch our topic. Talking to a few other young economists who are quite excited about the amount of money, because I think we have done a poor job in articulating to the average Guyanese how much the crazy amount of money that will be coming into the country, not only from the oil benefits, but the surrounding industries and the investments. We are estimated by 2029 to have about 30 times our annual budget. I don't know if my numbers are right. You are the numbers guy, but uh, there's a fear by many Guyanese people out there that they are not going to see the benefits of this. And you alluded to that just now with Venezuela. And how do we safeguard ourselves as Guyanese from getting into that place where a large percentage of the population feels left out from these rising tides. It might mean that the tides are rising, but not all boats are rising.
Well, what I can tell you is this: as far as the coalitions approach this, and it's being discussed now at senior levels, there are policies and mechanisms being discussed that will ensure that the average Guyanese benefits substantially from oil and gas revenues. And so I want people to rest easy with that at the back of their mind. And
Mhm.
that is the advice that I provide, and those are the studies and the policies that I provide. So I want Guyanese to understand that the coalition hears you. I've heard many ordinary people myself complain, how is it that I'm going to benefit from it? Exactly how? I don't see these benefits. We will ensure that you feel those benefits in your every day that you are in Ghana. We will ensure that. And so you should rest easy that there will be substantial benefits that will impact you. But at the same time, that is future looking. What we're talking about right now is that Guyana is currently receiving a bumper, an extraordinary profit due to the same inflation that's impacting us, is impacting everyone. It's impacting people at the pump due to higher oil prices. Fine. But since we're an oil producer, that means that we're getting more revenue, does it not? And what I am saying is, if you're going to say, well, let's not spend this extra revenue, let's not borrow against this extra revenue because we may need it for a rainy day. That rainy day is today. I
Yeah.
just saw a message to say that we should anticipate extraordinary levels of rain over the next 24 hours. What rainy day are you waiting for? This is the rainy day. Why are they not providing to ordinary Guyanese stimulus as a relief effort? Why are we not seeing rounds, multiple rounds of direct stimulus? This is poor. And as a result of it, more broadly, the economy is operating more slowly than it would otherwise operate. You know, we're seeing unemployment at high levels. We're seeing businesses complain, taxi men are complaining, people are complaining on the street, vendors are complaining. That's as a result of not having as aggressive a policy as we need to have. And I'll tell you another thing which concerns me. We passed the largest budget in the history of Guyana last year for this year. We passed a supplementary budget, fine. So clearly there's money that's being spent. My question is, why isn't the money being spent on the ordinary citizen? Why aren't the ordinary citizens getting some direct relief in a time of natural disaster? That's pretty strange, right? It makes me think that this money is being put towards other purposes.
Well,
And so I ask you, what are these other purposes?
yeah, I like other Guyanese are a bit confused as to the PPP's policies to that has to do with this spending of this money and the policies surrounding the natural resources fund. We know that this has to be to take money out of the natural resources fund. It has to be a bilateral, well, not bilateral, bilateral, um, a joint, sorry, a joint thing by
So
the opposition and the MP.
let
Am
me
I, am I
clarify
on
it
the
for you.
right
Let me
track here?
clarify.
Give us
Let
the
me clarify
information
it for you.
behind that.
Let me clarify it for you. I
Mhm.
think that what often happens is that folks who are not very financially literate will
Mhm.
miss some of the tricks or some of the measures that those who are financially illiterate will
Mhm.
use.
Mhm.
And so one of the things that is going on right now is that the PPP does not need to actually go to the Natural Resources Fund to spend the money.
Mhm.
What they can do is they can borrow much larger amounts, and you see they have raised the debt ceiling. They can borrow much larger amounts than we had previously borrowed
And
in
say that,
order to
okay, we
spend
have money in
money.
the bank there. We have money in the bank. This is why we can borrow from you, and then eventually we give you back. I
And
see.
what
I
it
see.
means to a creditor, if you can show, well, look, I have the funds sitting there. A creditor will think to themselves, oh, no problem. You have the money. Why would I worry that you wouldn't be able to repay?
Mhm.
Right? The other thing, though, which is unfortunate, is that because they're borrowing this money, when you borrow money, you don't have to pay interest.
Yeah. And
So,
that's going to fall on the future generation.
so instead of spending the money that is there by going through the Natural Resources Fund and utilizing the mechanisms there, right? Remember, there's provision in the Natural Resources Fund for natural disasters. Instead
Yeah.
of doing it the right way, they've decided to go around and try and bypass the system by borrowing money
Mm-hmm.
against what it is that we already have there.
Yeah.
And so now they can spend without any of the oversight that is included in the Natural Resources Fund.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's a good clarification. And when we talk person that are not totally uh, financially literate like myself, that's why we have you here. I'm happy that you explain that because persons are now getting a better idea as to what the people are doing. They're going to these people and say, look, we have money in
Yeah.
our natural resources fund, lend us money. Simply because they don't want to deal with the opposition and come to an agreement with the opposition to use the money that we have here. It is quite sad.
Yeah,
Quite
yeah,
sad.
and you will observe that recently, Foreign Minister Todd was speaking with executives, with representatives from Citibank, which is an
Mm-hmm.
investment bank in the U.S., good bank.
Mm-hmm.
But what are you talking to a bank for? Not to borrow money,
Mm-hmm.
all right? And the next thing I would say is, I recall that during Venezuela's crisis, they borrowed money even from Goldman Sachs, which was not advisable at the time.
Yeah.
Now, I'm not saying don't borrow and spend. I'm not saying don't spend money. What I'm saying is you should be withdrawing this money directly from the Natural Resources Fund so that there's oversight as to how much you can withdraw and what you're using this money for, so that you're activating the correct laws rather than going around, right? And the
Yeah.
other thing about this is the Natural Resources Fund even has provisions to ensure that we do not spend too much within a given year, right? There's economic committees that are supposed to analyze that and so on. But if what you're going to do is to borrow against that money and not have to deal with the committees, then you're opening up the country to all of the threats, all of the risks, all of the things that we were terrified of when we put in place that Natural Resources Fund. One of those things is going to be inflation. Another thing is going to be money is stolen, right? These are the types of things that we are trying to avoid by putting in place a natural resources fund.
Yeah.
And put it this way, let's pretend that we're a PvP supporter and we're saying, oh, but that natural resources fund, we don't like what's in it. What is stopping the PvP from changing the fund?
Mm-hmm.
There's something that's stopping them from doing that.
No, no.
Why are they avoiding the subject? If
Yeah.
you have a problem with the law, you are in power, you can change the law.
Right. Good point. Good point. And I'm happy that we're unpacking these issues for our people who are looking and those persons who are in the comment sections. Thank you very much for your contribution, folks who are here. Remember, you can still share the live stream. We're chatting with young economist Elson Lowe, who is the advisor on youth and economics. I think I got the right to leave the opposition, and who is also celebrating his birthday today. Don't let me forget that. We thank him for taking time out of his celebrations to be here. Let us switch topic, Elson, and talk about vaccine gate. There of course, much talk about the Sputnik V vaccine that Guyana bought from a middleman at on I don't want to say on, but the unapproved, overpriced vaccines that we got from the sheikh, the middleman who is selling this Russian vaccine. And we see around the world that this vaccine is the center of much attention. Not only this vaccine, but many other vaccines and the process of procurement. We have a number of articles. The Slavic PM steps down over Sputnik V vaccine deal scandal. That's essentially what we had here, a Sputnik V vaccine scandal where we didn't know until we went into parliament. But I'm not going to go into that because we unpacked that already. But around the world, we see continued Brazil to suspend India COVID-19 vaccine deal, right? So, folks, let us talk about this. Let us talk about this. You can come in the comments and let me bring in Elson here because, Elson, what are your thoughts on the government's rollout of this vaccine and how everything was unfolded?
Yeah, so let me start off by saying that, I think that those who can get vaccinated and are comfortable should try and get vaccinated. I don't want to promote in any form, and I don't think that the opposition wants to promote in any form any kind of vaccine hesitancy. However, let's deal with the real meat of this matter. The meat of this matter is, and I want Guyanese to understand that this is in no way unique to Guyana. Around the world, what you're seeing is that there are widespread scandals and questions of fraud, procurement fraud, and corruption regarding these vaccines and regarding the procurement of COVID 19 protective gear and everything that's connected with COVID 19. Even in the UK, their health secretary, Hancock, was recently forced to resign for breaching COVID protocols. But before that, he was before the court because he was fast tracking a lot of procurement where he was supposed to make these things public and he was making the information public. So we saw that he was under substantial pressure, and a judge said that notwithstanding the public health crisis, you have to make the details of these things public. In Eastern Europe, you're seeing the scandal with Sputnik V, where the PM was acting in a way that he shouldn't have. In Brazil, you're seeing a scandal with what we believe it's Covaxin, which is out of India, where there's considerable questions about whether that vaccine has been procured with fraud so that elites have been able to steal money out of the program. So it is not, oh, it's just the opposition that's talking about these things. These things are happening around the world. We have to be vigilant regarding them. We have to be persistently vigilant regarding them. Now, what I find to be useful when we look at what is going on in Brazil is that it has some nice parallels. First of all, we're looking at vaccines that are not approved by the WHO. Second of all, we're looking at vaccines where the countries in question paid an exorbitant price, much higher than the selling price for these vaccines. And third, looking at vaccines that were procured in a very quick process. And these things are all red flags for procurement fraud. What is really going on is that, or what is facilitated by these circumstances, is that you can bypass a lot of the typical procurement regulations because it's an emergency. And of course, that's great because we can assist people more quickly. But it is negative in that it allows those who want to thief. And so we need to be very vigilant because it is very possible that what we're looking at is procurement fraud regarding these vaccines. And, it's substantial. It's from some estimates in excess of $650 million Guyana dollars of procurement fraud, which is a substantial amount of procurement fraud. And as a result of that, you have to ask yourself, what else could we have done with $650 million? I give you one example of what we could have done with $650 million. We could have given some people in areas that needed some more relief. We could have given some cash grants to people with the $650 million instead of it perhaps ending up in a certain person's pocket. So we don't know what is going on with this. We need to press. We need to get the Auditor General again to look at it. And we need to ask ourselves why we paid an exorbitant rate for a vaccine. It has even come out that there are other vaccines that were available. Why would we pay more when there are other vaccines that are available? And I know some people would say, oh, the Sputnik is better and so on. But, of course, the WHO is still reviewing the Sputnik, and there's been some concerns because data has not been provided to them in a timely manner, which is strange, right? And so,
Yeah.
if you have something that WHO has approved, why wouldn't you go with that, especially if it is cheaper? Why would you
Exactly.
go with the more expensive thing that's not approved? It raises the question as to what the specific reasons were for going with Sputnik in particular. And I don't have anything against Sputnik as a vaccine, and I'm sure that as time goes on, we will see more data on it. What I have a problem with is that these circumstances raise a lot of red flags, right? And what we're seeing from the PPP is very suspicious activity. And this suspicious activity is costing, or could be costing, the Guyanese taxpayers $650 million, huge sums. So we have to be vigilant, and we have to ask ourselves why we're not getting further cash grants. But we're seeing $650 million that may have been squandered and ended up in somebody's pocket. You
Yeah.
know, and I tell you this: you combine that 650 million there, you combine the 1.5 billion from the first round of the vaccine. And we're starting to talk about some serious numbers.
Serious
And
money
I'm
that can go to
saying,
help people. Definitely.
good, good. Why are we not receiving other rounds of cash grants, but we're seeing questionable things that may be procurement fraud where the money ended up in people's pockets?
Yeah.
What really is the priority?
Well, we don't know. I think we'll lose our minds trying to rationalize the actions of the PPP. But once we run out of time this afternoon, Elson, I want to give you an opportunity to, give us one more thing as we head into our final segment of the show. One more thing.
Give me some folks and let me sing something now.
Right, we were supposed to play our intro there, but I don't know what happened. But I'll give you opportunity, Elson, now as we end our program, 1 minute or so to leave our audience, our viewers, with one more thing.
Sure. Well, one of the things that we observe is that there's a lot of tension between the Trinidad government and the Guyana government over some purported or some alleged statements coming out of Trinidad. But one of the things we've seen in the wake of that, and there's a question as to whether it's connected, is this statement that we prefer pumps from Trinidad, we don't want to get food from Trinidad, we didn't ask for food aid, something to that effect. And it concerns me deeply, and I think it should concern the average Guyanese deeply, that the PPP, let me rephrase, that the PPP would be willing to refuse food aid when in the markets right now, prices are beyond ridiculous. So instead of bringing in some food aid that will help to push down the prices and provide relief, perhaps because of some personal animosity, we are not seeing Guyanese receive the relief that they really should be receiving. This is unbelievable. At a time when inflation is skyrocketing, I saw a picture the other day of a squash that was $2,400. It's crazy.
Mm-hmm.
At a time when this is what is going on, how can you not be willing to accept food aid? I mean, the ordinary Guyanese is who is suffering from this. So I want our listeners tonight to take that with them, that attitude towards assistance is a poor attitude, and that as a result of it, you are not receiving things that may have helped to lower the price of goods in the market, lower the price for you to eat every single day, for you and your family and your children to eat. That is what is going on. We are allowing ourselves to get caught up, and as a result of that, we are not getting access to relief for people who are suffering. So that is what I want people to take away tonight.
Right. With that said, Elson, we want to say thank you very much for being on the program this afternoon. Always insightful to have you here. Always good to hear your thoughts. Elson Lowe, folks, who is also celebrating. I will remind our public celebrating his birthday today. Elson, do enjoy the rest of the evening. I hope that you're able to come to work tomorrow, Elson.
Thank you.
All right.
And you have a good rest of the night as well.
Right. I know you will enjoy the rest of your night. Do enjoy all of it, all of the celebrations, Elson. Thank you very much. Okay. Folks, we're chatting there with a young economist and advisor to the opposition leader on youth and economics, Elson Lowe, who brought us some very interesting insight to what is happening in the economy. Folks, we're quickly out of time. I'm trying to follow some of the comments here so that we can wrap up our program this afternoon, right? But let me say thank you very much to all of you who were part of the program. We are going to be joining Miss Coretta McDonald for her program, Advancing the Cause, which has started already. So we want to bring that. Sorry, I'm just trying to follow some breaking information here, but definitely can't bring that for you, right? And right. So if we can get it here, folks, as we finish up on the show. Right? But folks, do enjoy the rest of your evening. My name is Randolph Critchell. We'll bring you that breaking news a little later down in the evening as we continue to let you know what is happening in and around the country. Thank you very much for joining me, River. I always say to you, let's continue to work together for national development. Let's continue to keep vigilant. Let's keep our eyes on what is happening around the country, folks. My name is Randolph Critchlow. Do enjoy the rest of the evening.